Matthew Sucky here from Verity Baptist Church, Manila, and I wanted to just provide you with some helpful tips for the missions trip coming up in January here in the Philippines. If you're planning to attend this missions trip and be soul winning, I want to give you some helpful tips. Now, I would also encourage Filipinos that actually watch this video, if you have other tips that you would recommend, please put them in below. Please send a message below on this video, because obviously, we want to make sure people are aware of everything, and some of you would have a better idea than me on things. But I just want to give you some updates on just a few things to keep in mind about this trip. One thing is in terms of giving people money. There are going to be people that are going to ask you for money, especially when they can tell that you're a foreigner and you're not from the Philippines. You'll have a lot of people ask you for money. Now, in America, people do ask you for money, but I want you to understand that in the Philippines, they might be a tad bit more aggressive. Especially you'll have a lot of kids that are going to ask you for money. Now, part of you would look at a kid and say, I'm really burdened to help out this kid and to give him money. He doesn't have much. But what you have to understand is that oftentimes these kids, this money isn't even for themselves. Sometimes there will be a rich person who will hire a bunch of kids, and basically he just provides their meals, and so their job is to beg for money, and they give most of that money to him. So oftentimes when you're giving money to these kids, it's not even going to them. And oftentimes, usually they don't really know what to spend it on and things like that. So I would just highly recommend that you don't give them money. And what you're going to find is if you give one kid money, you're going to be surrounded by like 5 or 6 other kids who are going to try to grab money from you. So you got to be careful a little bit. Now, this is just very common in countries that are maybe not as wealthy as the United States or areas such as that. And they will assume with foreigners that you have money, and they will beg for money from you. But I would just highly recommend that you don't give them money. Okay, and you also want to be careful about where your money is located. So I generally keep my money in my pockets. I think that's the safest and best place to keep it. If you keep it in a book bag and you have it on your back, somebody is liable, one of these kids is liable maybe to open it up and take money. Now I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to give you a heads up that obviously in poor countries things like this happen. You want to keep a close eye on your money. So the best place would probably be in your pockets. The wallet is not the best area because they are experienced with foreigners of being able to take, a wallet from them. I do not carry a wallet here in the Philippines. I wouldn't recommend you carry a wallet. I'd actually recommend that if you're going to wear a book bag, that what you're going to do is actually wear it on the front, such as this, as opposed to on your back, so you can keep a close eye on it. Now, it's going to be a little bit awkward at first if you've never done that. But honestly, that's probably the best thing that you can do to keep it safe. And definitely as you're going soul winning, you want to bring bottled water in your book bag. Another thing to keep in mind is with water, you probably don't want to drink the water at restaurants and things like that. You always want to drink bottled water. Now, there's tons of convenience stores and places where they sell bottled water, but I would just highly recommend that you get bottled water. You want to be careful because obviously if you drink the water and come from another place, you could very easily get sick like a lot of people do. So those are a few things to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is this, that it's smarter to, if you're going to catch a ride with something, to catch a ride with Grab than it would be with cabs, okay? Now you can download Grab on your phone, and it's essentially like the Uber of the Philippines. And Grab is great because if you happen to get lost somewhere, then you can, call for a Grab ride, and it's a set price, so they cannot rip you off, and they can pick you up at the location you're at, and they can drop you off the location you want to go. So being a set price, you're not going to get ripped off like you would in a cab. Obviously, they're used to a lot of foreigners coming here and visiting, and they're going to charge you a lot more if they know you're an American or from Europe or something like that. And so Grab would be the best thing, G-R-A-B. So you want to download that on your smartphone, and that's the best thing to use. It's going to be a set price of how much you have to pay. So I would recommend that with Grab if you're looking for a ride. At the airport, you can always schedule a ride ahead of time with your hotel that you're staying at. Oftentimes they have pickups. If not, they do have some Grab stations at the airport as well, I believe. I'm not quite sure of the exact location, but I have heard they have a Grab station at the airport where they can actually schedule the ride for you. But you want to just be careful with cabs. They could very easily overcharge you. But another thing is when it comes to being out at night, okay? I wouldn't really recommend that you're out kind of late at night by yourself, Where we're going soul winning is kind of a tourist area in Manila. And as part of Metro Manila, Manila is the most packed area. And it's great for soul winning. We're going to get tons of people saved in Rizal Park. But the truth is that in terms of Metro Manila, Manila is kind of the area with the most corruption and most problems, most things like prostitution and things like that. You want to be very careful. I remember the day before we preached our first sermon, I was fellowshipping with some of the members at our church on that Saturday, and someone would come in from Hong Kong to visit. And, I was having dinner with them, and, my wife was back at our room that we were staying at. I think she was spending time with her sisters, but I went there to fellowship for a little while. And so I'm spending time fellowshipping. Right after I get done, it had just gotten dark, and all of a sudden, some woman tried to stop me and say, oh, come get a massage, and she said, and so much more. And it was obvious what she was saying. But they realize there's a lot of tourists in this area, and there is some prostitution and things like that. So just like in America, you don't really want to be out late at night, especially in areas such as this. It's not necessarily great to be out by yourself late at night, because obviously at night that's when things happen. So I just recommend that you don't want to be out by yourself late at night, and so I'd recommend that. I would also recommend that if you get lost or you have questions, the best people to ask would be policemen. So there are a lot of policemen and guards at pretty much every restaurant and all over the Philippines, and so pretty much every company hires one to protect their area and things like that. So I would recommend those are the best people to ask questions. Generally, they speak very good English, and they can help you out, and they're people that you could trust more than others. I'd also recommend that if you're going to exchange money, you want to be careful that you exchange money at the right place, because some of them might end up ripping you off for the exchange rate. And so one very safe place would be at the airport. You could exchange money right when you land. That's a good location, but you want to be careful that they don't charge you a ripped off rate. Right now the average is about a little bit less than 53. I think it's between 52 and 53. And so you want to be careful, because sometimes they'll kind of cut it down and kind of rip you off a little bit if you're not careful. So make sure you're getting the right amount. And one other thing is, when it comes to soul winning, a few things. One, it is hot in the Philippines. Now, January is not the hottest time of year, but it still might be hotter than you're used to, and it's also very humid. So it does take time to get used to. And so, honestly, it's very hard to go soul winning for a super long amount of time. And so obviously, go soul winning as much as you can, but we don't want you to overstress yourself or burden yourself and feel like you got to be out for 7 or 8 hours. We're going to have kind of a schedule of events coming up here in a little bit, but obviously you don't have to go out every single time. You're here to have a great time. You're here to go soul winning, but also have a time of vacation. Hey, you're welcome to go and have a vacation someday. You don't feel like you have to be at every single event. You want to make sure you're staying hydrated, and if you need to take a rest, just take a rest. It's not a competition. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of people saved. We're going to have a great time, but I don't want you to feel like you got to just go soul winning until you drop. There's a lot of exciting things to do and fun things to do in Manila, so I'd recommend you even take a day off and go to see some of these exciting things. It's going to be a great time. But one thing to keep in mind about your soul winning, okay? The vast majority of people in the Philippines, they speak English, okay? But sometimes, even though they speak English, they're kind of too shy to talk to you in English. And so sometimes people don't want to talk to you because they don't want to have to speak English. Even though they understand it, and they understand it well enough to get saved, they're not going to feel necessarily comfortable all the time speaking to you in English. But when you do have someone who's willing to listen to you, there are some people here that they speak English perfectly fine, but the accents are different and the way they say certain things are different. So I would highly recommend that you slow down in your gospel presentation when you're talking to people. I spend more time preaching the gospel here in the Philippines during conversations than I do in America, just because I know I have an accent and it's going to take them a little bit of time. So you want to slow down a little bit, make sure they're understanding everything. I like to use a lot of examples. I always use the example of my son when it comes to explaining eternal security, because I think the examples are really helpful to them. I didn't always use that example in America, but it is something I use in the Philippines, because I know that I might not be able to express things quite as well, but I can express to them how my son's always going to be my son, even if I give him a punishment when he breaks my rules. I'm able to express that pretty well. So I think examples are really good. The father-son example, the gift example. But I just recommend that you slow down a little bit. Your goal should not be to get the most saved out of anybody here. Your goal should be just to try to preach the gospel to as many people as you can, but do an accurate and a thorough job to everybody that you preach to. So those are just some helpful tips and reminders before you come to this event. And I'm not trying to scare you off with some of the things I mentioned at the beginning. I just want you to be aware of them, that you're going to see that at a lot of countries that are, not as wealthy as the United States. They're just things to keep in mind. And it's awesome here, though. I love living here. There's a lot of great, exciting things to do. And so, definitely I recommend take a day off and go somewhere and do something. Look at some of the events that are nearby. There's a lot of fun, exciting things to do. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at vbcmanila@gmail.com. vbcmanila@gmail.com. And as I said, we're going to have a schedule of events coming out here pretty soon. And so I think that's all I can think of. And like I said, if there's any Filipinos that watch this and you know of other things that people should keep their mind about, or you have any ideas, hey, please send a message down below to help other people out that are coming here. And we look forward to having you here in a couple weeks. And I just want to thank you for watching this video. We look forward to having you, and Happy New Year as well. Thank you, and God bless.